I still remember the sound of that knock. 3 deliberate raps against the cheap wooden door of room 117 at the Sunset Motel. It was 1:14 a.m. on a Tuesday night, and I was lying on a mattress that smelled like cigarette smoke and broken dreams, staring at water stains on the ceiling that looked like accusatory faces. That knock changed everything, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. Back when I still believed that love could conquer anything, that sacrifice meant something, that the person sleeping beside you every night would never become a stranger. 12 years. That's how long Rachel and I had been married when the diagnosis came. 12 years of mortgage payments and dance recitals and arguing over whose turn it was to take out the trash. We had 2 beautiful kids, Emma, who was 9, and little Jake, who had just turned 6. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house on Maple Street with a yard just big enough for a swing set and Rachel's vegetable garden that never quite produced the tomatoes she dreamed of. We weren't rich. I worked as a mechanical engineer at a mid-sized manufacturing company, and Rachel taught piano lessons from home 3 days a week. We had exactly enough. Enough for family vacations to the lake every summer. Enough for birthday parties and Christmas mornings. Enough to feel secure, to sleep peacefully, to believe we were building something that would last. Then came that afternoon in March. Rachel had been feeling tired for months. We'd chalked it up to the usual exhaustion of parenting, of running a household, of life in your late 30s. But when the fatigue didn't lift, when she started losing weight without trying, when bruises appeared on her arms from the gentlest bump, I finally convinced her to see Dr. Patterson. I'll never forget the phone call. I was at work, reviewing blueprints for a new conveyor system, when my phone buzzed. "David," she said, and I knew immediately. Her voice was hollow, scraped clean of all the music it usually held. "Dr. Patterson wants us both to come in. Today. Right now." I left work without even shutting down my computer. Acute myeloid leukemia. Aggressive. Advanced. The words tumbled from Dr. Patterson's mouth like stones, each one landing heavy in my chest. Rachel sat beside me, her hand ice-cold in mine as he explained treatment protocols, survival statistics, the urgent need to begin chemotherapy immediately. "What are we looking at?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady for Rachel's sake. "In terms of cost?" Dr. Patterson shifted in his chair. "With your insurance, you're looking at significant out-of-pocket expenses. Deductibles, co-pays, the drugs that aren't fully covered. I'd estimate somewhere between $250,000 and $350,000 over the course of treatment." The number hung in the air like smoke. We had maybe $40,000 in savings. Our house had perhaps $90,000 in equity. Even if we liquidated everything, we'd come up short. Rachel was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. I squeezed her hand. "We'll figure it out," I told her, "whatever it takes." I meant it with every cell in my body. The next 9 months became a blur of hospitals and bills and second jobs and slowly watching everything we'd built together disappear piece by piece. I took a night position at a warehouse, loading trucks from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., then going straight to my engineering job. I slept in my car during lunch breaks, surviving on gas station coffee and the kind of determination that comes from watching someone you love fight for every breath. The bills came like an avalanche. $78,000 for the first round of chemo, $45,000 for the bone marrow biopsy and testing, $92,000 for the second treatment protocol when the first one didn't work. Insurance covered portions, but the portions they didn't cover were devastating. First, we sold Rachel's car, then mine, downgrading to a 1998 Honda with 240,000 miles that I bought off Craigslist for some $200. We put the house on the market. It sold in 3 weeks to a young couple who looked at our home the way I remembered looking at it 12 years earlier, full of hope and dreams and the future. I signed the papers at a title company while Rachel was getting a platelet transfusion. We moved into a small rental apartment, the 4 of us crammed into a 2-bedroom place that smelled like the previous tenant's cats. The kids' rooms got combined. Emma cried about leaving her friends, her school, her room with the purple walls she'd picked out herself. Jake was too young to understand, but old enough to sense that something was terribly wrong. Then the furniture. A estate sale company took most of it. Our dining room table, where we'd eaten 1,000 meals together. The couch, where we'd watched the kids take their first steps, Rachel's grandmother's rocking chair. I watched strangers load our life into trucks and drive away, taking cash payments that went straight to the hospital billing department. My tools went next. I'd spent years collecting them. Good tools, professional grade, the kind you hand down to your children. I sold them to a guy who ran a pawn shop downtown. He knew I was desperate and paid me half what they were worth. I didn't argue. I needed the money more than I needed pride. Then came the day I'll never forget. I was sitting in Rachel's hospital room on a gray afternoon in October, the kind of day where the sky and the city seemed to blend into one monochromatic blur. She'd been admitted for complications from the latest round of treatment. Her white blood cell count had dropped to dangerous levels, making her vulnerable to any infection, any bacteria, any invisible threat that the rest of us carried without consequence. They'd isolated her in a special room with an airlock-style entrance. I had to scrub my hands for 3 full minutes before entering, don a mask and gown, become sterile enough to be in her presence. She was sleeping when I arrived, her face pale against the white pillow, her once thick chestnut hair now just wispy patches clinging stubbornly to her scalp. She'd cried when it started falling out in clumps. I'd held her while she sobbed, telling her she was beautiful, that it was just hair, that it would grow back. I'd even shaved my own head in solidarity, thinking it would help. She'd laughed through her tears and called me an idiot. That was back when she still laughed. I sat in my usual chair by the window, watching her breathe. The machines did their mechanical symphony. Beep, hiss, hum, repeat. I'd learned what each sound meant, which beeps were normal and which ones would bring nurses running. I was fluent in the language of medical equipment now, conversational in the dialect of desperate hope. The hospital payment coordinator had called that morning while I was loading trucks at the warehouse. Sandra. Her name was Sandra, and she always sounded apologetic when she called, like she hated being the messenger of financial ruin. We were $87,000 behind. The number had accumulated like snow, each bill adding its layer until we were buried. They wouldn't continue treatment unless we made a significant payment, at least $25,000, within a week. "I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison," Sandra had said, and she genuinely sounded sorry. "I know you're doing everything you can, but the hospital has policies. Without payment, we have to suspend non-emergency care." Non-emergency care, as if cancer could wait, as if death kept business hours. I'd hung up and stood in the warehouse loading dock, surrounded by boxes bound for places where people weren't watching their wives die by degrees, and I'd tried to figure out where I could find $25,000. We'd already sold everything. The house, gone. The cars, gone. The furniture, gone. My retirement account, drained. Rachel's jewelry, including her grandmother's diamond earrings, pawned. That's when I looked down at my left hand. My wedding ring caught the harsh warehouse lights, the simple gold band I'd placed on her finger 12 years earlier, the one she'd placed on mine, making me hers and her mine in front of God and a church full of people we loved. I remembered the day we picked them out. We'd been so young, so broke, so ridiculously optimistic about everything. We'd gone to 6 jewelry stores, trying on rings we couldn't afford, laughing about the absurdity of spending thousands of dollars on tiny circles of metal. "It's not about the ring," Rachel had said, squeezing my hand as we left yet another store empty-handed. "It's about what it means." We'd finally found a small jeweler in a strip mall, a gruff old man who'd sized us up and showed us the simplest bands he had. "Love doesn't need diamonds," he'd said. "Love just needs commitment." We bought matching gold bands for $400 total. The jeweler engraved them for free. Rachel said, "Forever yours," and mine said, "Always." Simple, true, permanent. I twisted the ring off my finger for the first time since our wedding day. It resisted initially, stuck there by over a decade of wear, by sweat and soap and the normal expansion and contraction of daily life. I worked it over my knuckle, and suddenly it was off, sitting in my palm. It left a pale indent in my skin, a ghost of itself, a ring-shaped absence where there had always been presence. My finger looked wrong without it, naked, vulnerable, like I'd lost a piece of myself. I stood there in that warehouse, holding my wedding ring, calculating its value. 14-karat gold, approximately 7 grams. Maybe $300, maybe $400 if I could find the right buyer. Not enough for $25,000. Not even close. But it was something. It was one more sacrifice in a long line of sacrifices. One more piece of myself I could throw into the fire to keep Rachel alive a little longer. I didn't cry. I'd become too numb for tears by then. I just closed my fist around the ring and got back to work. That afternoon, after my shift ended, I drove to a jeweler in a neighborhood I'd never visited before. I couldn't go to the man who'd sold us our rings. I couldn't look him in the eye and tell him that forever had a price tag after all. This jeweler was young, maybe 30, with gauges in his ears and tattoos covering both arms. He looked at me with a practiced expression of polite disinterest. "I need to sell this," I said, placing the ring on his counter. He picked it up, examined it with a loupe, weighed it on a digital scale. 14 karat, 7 grams. I can give you $340. $340 for a symbol of forever. Less than the cost of a decent dinner for 2. Less than we'd spent on Emma's last birthday party. The math of love, reduced to the weight of gold. Okay, I said. He counted out the bills. I watched him, thinking how strange it was that this transaction meant nothing to him, just another piece of gold to melt down and remake into something else, while for me it felt like cutting off a limb. "Wedding ring?" he asked, probably seeing something in my face. "Yeah." "Sorry, man. These are the hardest ones to see come through." I took the money and drove straight to the hospital. I gave it all to Sandra, who processed the payment and assured me it would buy us another week of treatment. 1 week, $340 for 1 more week. I returned to Rachel's room, scrubbed my hands raw, suited up in my protective gear, and sat beside her while she slept. I looked at our hands side by side, hers with the ring, mine without. The asymmetry felt wrong, like a sentence missing its punctuation, a song missing its final note. I never told her I'd sold it. When she was awake enough to notice a few days later, I told her I'd taken it off because I'd lost weight from stress and was afraid of losing it. "It's at home," I lied, "in my sock drawer for safekeeping." She believed me because she wanted to believe me, because the truth would have broken what little spirit she had left, because sometimes love means lying to protect the person you love from knowing exactly how much you've sacrificed. I used the $340 to partially pay for the medication Rachel needed that week. It covered maybe a quarter of the cost. The rest went on yet another credit card, adding to a mountain of debt I couldn't see the top of anymore. But she lived through that week, and the next week, and the next. And in the end, that's all that mattered to me. Every sacrifice, every dollar, every sleepless night, every piece of myself I sold or gave away, all of it was worth it if it meant she survived. I just never imagined that she'd survive and then leave me anyway. I never imagined that love, no matter how pure or sacrificial or complete, could be so easily discarded by the person you gave everything to save. But that's exactly what happened. Every night, I'd sit in that hospital room after working my warehouse shift, my engineering job, whatever side gigs I could pick up. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, never quite bright enough or dim enough, casting everything in a sickly pale glow. The machines beeped their rhythmic confirmation that she was still alive, still breathing, still fighting. I'd settle into the uncomfortable vinyl chair that had molded itself to my shape over months of vigils, and I'd hold Rachel's hand, the one with her wedding ring still on it, the ring I'd protected by selling mine. Her hand felt different than it used to, lighter somehow, the bones more prominent, the skin paper-thin. The chemo had changed everything about her, stolen the softness from her edges, left her angular and fragile. But her ring finger still bore the simple gold band I'd placed there 12 years earlier, and I'd trace it with my thumb, remembering the young woman in the white dress who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health. "We're going to beat this," I'd whisper, my voice hoarse from exhaustion and too much coffee. "You're going to watch Emma graduate high school. You're going to cry at her senior recital. You're going to teach Jake to drive, and you're going to grip the door handle and press your foot on an imaginary brake just like your mom did with you. We're going to grow old together and argue about what color to paint the house and whose turn it is to make dinner. We're going to be those annoying old people at the grocery store who hold up the line because we forgot our coupons." I'd paint her pictures with words, detailed visions of a future I was desperately trying to buy with every dollar, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. I'd tell her about the garden we'd plant when she got better, how we'd finally take that trip to Maine she'd always wanted, how we'd renew our vows for our 15th anniversary. She'd squeeze my hand weakly and smile, her lips cracked and dry despite the constant application of balm. "You're such a dreamer, David," she'd whisper. "Oh, I'm a realist," I'd correct. "This is real. We're going to make it real." In those moments, sitting in that sterile room that smelled like antiseptic and hope and fear, I believed my own words. I believed love was enough. I believed that if I sacrificed enough, worked hard enough, refused to give up, the universe would reward that dedication. I believed in fairy tales where the prince saves the princess and they live happily ever after. I was such a fool. But I couldn't see it then. All I could see was the woman I loved fighting for her life, and all I could do was fight alongside her with the only weapons I had. My labor, my possessions, my unwavering commitment. I didn't know that some people don't want to be saved. I didn't know that gratitude can curdle into resentment, that sacrifice can look like weakness to someone who's decided to survive at any cost. I just loved her, completely, blindly, desperately, and I truly believed it would be enough. The day Dr. Patterson told us Rachel was in remission, I actually fell to my knees in the hospital corridor and cried. Not quiet tears, but the kind of sobbing that comes from 9 months of holding everything inside, of being strong when strength is the only thing keeping you upright. It was early December, 3 days before Jake's 7th birthday. The latest scans were clear. Her blood work was improving. The cancer, for now, was gone. "You did it," I told her, holding both her hands in mine. You beat it, baby. You're going to be okay. She smiled, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. Something behind her eyes had changed, hardened, gone distant. I told myself it was the trauma, the months of being sick, the fear of death. I told myself that once we got back to normal, once she got stronger, the woman I married would come back to me. I was wrong. We moved from the apartment into an even smaller place, a one-bedroom unit where the kids slept in the bedroom and Rachel and I took the living room couch. I'd sold or liquidated almost everything to pay for her treatment. We had maybe $24,000 left in the bank, no assets, no car worth more than scrap value, and debt collectors calling 3 times a day about the medical bills I hadn't been able to cover. But Rachel was alive. That was all that mattered. The change happened gradually, then suddenly. She started staying out late, telling me she needed space to process everything. She'd go for walks that lasted hours. She stopped eating dinner with us, stopped asking about the kids' days, stopped looking at me the way she used to, like I was her partner, her person, her home. "Are you okay?" I'd ask, trying to hold her hand, trying to bridge the distance that seemed to grow wider every day. "I'm fine," she'd say, pulling away. "I just need time." I gave her time. I gave her space. I gave her everything I had left to give, which admittedly wasn't much except my presence and my patience and my belief that we'd survive this together. Then came the morning in January that would cleave my life into before and after. I woke up on the couch to find Rachel standing over me, already dressed in clothes I didn't recognize, new jeans that actually fit her recovered body, a sweater that looked expensive, makeup carefully applied. It was 6:47 a.m. I knew the exact time because I looked at my phone, thinking maybe I'd overslept, maybe there was an emergency. The kids were still asleep in the bedroom we'd turned into their shared space, their gentle breathing audible through the thin walls. "I want a divorce," she said. Just like that. No preamble. No gentle lead-in. No, "we need to talk," or "I've been thinking," or any of the cushioning phrases people use when they're about to detonate someone's world. She delivered it the way you'd announce what you wanted for breakfast. Flat, factual, final. I sat up slowly, my entire body aching from sleeping on a couch that was never meant for full-time use, my mind struggling through the fog of exhaustion and sudden adrenaline to process the words she'd just spoken. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd misheard. Maybe she said she wanted to talk about our finances, or our living situation, or what to do next. Anything but divorce. "What?" I managed. "Rachel, what are you talking about?" She crossed her arms over her chest, a gesture I'd come to recognize as her defensive stance, her way of closing herself off from the world. "I've been thinking about this for weeks, David. I should have told you sooner, but I wanted to be sure." "Sure about what?" I was on my feet now, my heart starting to hammer against my ribs. "We just went through hell together. You survived. Things are going to get better now. We can rebuild." "I don't want to rebuild with you." She cut me off, and her voice had an edge to it, something sharp and cold that I'd never heard directed at me before. "I survived cancer, David. Do you understand what that means? I came that close to dying." She held up her thumb and forefinger, barely a centimeter between them. "I could have died, but I didn't. I got a second chance, a literal second chance at life." "I know," I said, reaching for her hand. She stepped back, putting physical distance between us. "I was there, Rachel. Every day, every treatment, and I don't want to spend my second chance like this." She gestured around our tiny apartment, at the second-hand furniture we'd cobbled together, at the cramped space that was all we could afford, at me standing there in old sweatpants and a t-shirt with sweat stains from my warehouse job. "I don't want to spend it being poor, being stressed, living in this shithole with someone who can't provide." The words hit me like physical blows. Can't provide? Rachel, I worked 2 jobs. I sold everything we owned. I sold my wedding ring to pay for your medication. How can you say I can't provide? And where did all that providing get us? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was bitter, sharp-edged, cruel. "Look around, David. Really look. We have nothing. Less than nothing. We're drowning in debt. We're living in a dump. You're working yourself to death for what? So we can barely survive?" "You're alive," I said, and my voice broke. "That's what it got us. You're alive and cancer-free and standing here. That's everything." "It's not enough." She shook her head. "I need more than just being alive. I need a real life, and I need a real man who can give me that life." The phrase hung in the air between us like toxic gas. A real man. As if everything I'd done, every sacrifice I'd made, every hour I'd worked, every piece of myself I'd sold, as if none of it was enough to qualify me as real. "What's a real man to you, Rachel?" I asked quietly. "Someone who lets the person they love die because saving them is too expensive? Someone who walks away when things get hard? Is that what you want? Someone who'll abandon you the way you're abandoning me? Her face flushed. I'm not abandoning you. This is mutual. This is us both recognizing that we're not compatible anymore. This isn't mutual. I'm standing here willing to fight for us, and you're telling me you want out because I'm not rich enough for your second chance. It's not about money. It's entirely about money. My voice rose, and I forced myself to lower it, aware of the children sleeping in the next room. You just said you want someone who can provide a real life. That's about money, Rachel. You're leaving me because I went broke saving your life. I didn't ask you to do that, she shot back, her voice rising too. I never asked you to sell everything. That was your choice. The statement landed like a slap. She didn't ask me to save her life, as if loving someone, as if commitment, as if, in sickness and in health, required explicit permission, as if I should have asked her first. Excuse me, honey, but would you mind if I try to keep you alive? Just want to make sure you're okay with me not letting you die. I stared at her, trying to find some trace of the woman I'd married, the woman who'd cried when I proposed on a beach at sunset, the woman who'd held my hand during Emma's birth and told me I was her hero, the woman who'd slow danced with me in our kitchen at midnight while Jake slept in his crib. That woman was gone, replaced by this stranger who looked at me with something uncomfortably close to contempt. What happened to you? I whispered. When did you become someone who could say these things to someone who loves you? I woke up, she said simply. Cancer woke me up. It made me realize that life is short and I don't have time to waste being miserable. You're miserable? With me? Yes. The word was brutal in its simplicity. Yes, David. I'm miserable. I'm tired of being poor. I'm tired of this apartment. I'm tired of struggling. I'm tired of watching you work yourself into the ground and having nothing to show for it. I want more. I deserve more. You do deserve more, I agreed, and I meant it. You deserve someone who will love you unconditionally, someone who will sacrifice everything for you, someone who will sit by your hospital bed every night and promise you a future even when the present is terrifying. You deserve someone exactly like me, and you're throwing it away. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing myself. For once in my life, I'm putting myself first. You've always put yourself first. The anger finally broke through, hot and sharp. I put you first. I put you first every single day for 9 months. I worked until my body was breaking down. I sold everything I owned. I gave up sleep and health and security and my wedding ring, Rachel, to keep you alive. And now you're telling me you want a real man? I was the realest man you'll ever find, and you just didn't appreciate it. She was crying now, but they were angry tears, frustrated tears. This is exactly why this won't work. You think I should be grateful. You think I owe you something because you did what any decent husband would do. Most husbands wouldn't have done what I did, I said quietly. Most people have limits. I didn't. I would have given anything for you. I did give everything. I know, she said, and for just a moment her voice softened. I know you did, David, and maybe that's the problem. You gave everything, and now there's nothing left. Not for me, not for the kids, not even for yourself. You're empty, and I can't live with empty. The words were perhaps the most honest thing she'd said. I was empty. She was right. I'd poured myself out completely, and there was nothing left in the vessel. I'd forgotten to save anything for myself. I'd martyred myself on the altar of her survival, and now she was walking away from my sacrifice because it reminded her too much of how close she'd come to death. The kids? I started, trying to find solid ground, something we could still fight for together. What about Emma and Jake? I'll be taking primary custody, she said, and her voice was firm again, businesslike. You can have visitation, obviously, but look at this place, David. You don't even have a bedroom for them. You can barely take care of yourself right now. They need stability. They need a real home. A real home, a real man, real life. The word real was becoming a weapon she wielded with expert precision, using it to delegitimize everything I'd built, everything I was, everything I'd tried to be. They need their father, I said. They need me. They'll see you. We'll work out a schedule. But I need full custody, at least until you get back on your feet, whenever that might be. There was doubt in that last phrase, a suggestion that maybe I'd never get back on my feet, that this brokenness was permanent, that I'd always be the man who sacrificed everything and ended up with nothing. I love them, I said, and my voice cracked. I love you, all three of you. You're my whole life. That's the problem, David. She picked up a bag I hadn't noticed by the door. Packed already, planned out, this whole conversation choreographed in advance. We can't be your whole life. It's too much pressure. It's too much weight for anyone to carry. You need to figure out who you are outside of us. She moved toward the door, and I felt panic rising in my chest. Where are you going? I have a place. Marcus offered. Marcus. The name came out flat. Who the hell is Marcus? She had the decency to look uncomfortable. He's a trainer at the gym I joined. He's been helping me get my strength back. We're friends. Friends. I nodded slowly, understanding flooding through me like ice water. You're leaving me for your gym trainer. That's why you've been going for all those walks. That's where you've been. It's not like that. Marcus just understands what I've been through. He's supportive. He doesn't make me feel guilty for wanting more from life. I never made you feel guilty. Every time you look at me, I see what you sacrificed, she said, her voice rising again. Every time you're tired, every time we can't afford something, every time you mention how hard you're working, I see the cost of keeping me alive. Do you know what that feels like? To be someone's burden, to know that you destroyed someone's life just by surviving. The logic was twisted, narcissistic in a way I couldn't quite name. She was angry at me for saving her because it made her feel guilty about being saved. She was leaving because I'd sacrificed too much, made her survival cost too much, forced her to confront the reality that love sometimes requires loss. You're not a burden, I said weakly, even though I knew she wasn't listening anymore. You never were. I did it because I love you. I know. She opened the door. But I don't love you anymore, David. I don't know if I ever really did. Maybe I loved the idea of you, the security you represented. But that's gone now, and so am I. She left, just walked out of the apartment and our marriage without looking back. I stood there, listening to her footsteps recede down the hallway, listening to a car start outside, Marcus's car, probably, come to collect his prize. Emma found me there 20 minutes later, still standing in the same spot, tears running down my face that I couldn't seem to stop. Daddy? She was in her pajamas, her hair messy from sleep, holding the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. Where's Mommy going? I knelt down and pulled her into a hug, holding her tight against my chest while she squirmed a little, confused by my intensity. Mommy needed to go somewhere, I managed. But you're okay. Jake's okay. We're all okay. Are you crying? Yeah, baby. Sometimes grown-ups cry too. Why? How do you explain to a 9-year-old that her mother just left? That the family she'd known her entire life was splintering? That sometimes love isn't enough? Sacrifice isn't appreciated? And good people get destroyed by the people they try to save? Because I'm sad, I said simply. But it's okay to be sad sometimes. The sadness doesn't last forever. I hoped that was true. In that moment, standing in that apartment with my daughter in my arms, and my wife driving away with another man, and my entire world reduced to rubble, I couldn't imagine ever feeling anything but sad again. But I held Emma and stroked her hair and made my voice steady, because that's what fathers do. They break in private and stay whole in front of their children. They fall apart quietly and rebuild loudly. They lose everything and pretend they still have enough. I love you, I whispered into her hair. No matter what happens, I love you and Jake more than anything in the world. I love you too, Daddy, she said. And for that moment, it was enough to keep me standing. The divorce proceedings were brutal and swift. Rachel had hired a lawyer. Somehow, despite us being broke, she'd found money for a lawyer. Later, I'd learned Marcus had paid for it. I represented myself because I couldn't afford not to. The judge was a tired-looking woman in her 60s who'd probably seen 1,000 cases like ours. She listened as Rachel's lawyer painted me as unstable, financially ruined, unable to provide a proper home for the children. Your Honor, he said, shuffling papers. Mr. Morrison is currently residing in a 1-bedroom apartment with no stable housing arrangement for the minor children. He works excessive hours at 2 low-wage jobs, leaving him unable to provide proper supervision. My client, meanwhile, has secured stable housing and employment and is ready to provide the children with the stability they deserve. Stable housing, that meant Marcus's condo. Employment, that meant a part-time administrative job Marcus had gotten her at his gym. The judge awarded Rachel primary custody. I got supervised visitation every other weekend, pending a review in 6 months. Then came the division of assets. The judge looked at our financial statements, what little we had left. The marital assets remaining total approximately $24,000, she said. This will be divided equally between both parties. Each party will receive $12,000. I sat there in that courtroom and did the math in my head. I'd sold our house, my car, our furniture, my tools, my wedding ring. I'd worked myself into exhaustion, Given 9 months of my life sleeping 3 hours a night, and I was leaving with $12,000 and visitation rights to my own children. Rachel wouldn't look at me. She sat at the other table, her hand occasionally touching her lawyer's arm, smiling slightly like someone who'd just won something. "Mr. Morrison," the judge said, looking at me with what might have been pity. "Do you understand the ruling?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, because what else was there to say? The gavel came down. My marriage was over. I used $1,200 of my $12,000 to pay for a month at the Sunset Motel on the east side of town. It was the kind of place where you paid in cash and nobody asked questions, where the neon sign flickered and only the S, U, and T still worked, spelling out a dejected S-U-T into the night. Room 117 became my entire world. A double bed with a sagging mattress. A bathroom where the shower drain gurgled ominously and the mirror had a crack running through it like a lightning bolt. A small TV bolted to the dresser that got 6 fuzzy channels. A window that looked out onto the parking lot where people came and went at all hours, living their own desperate stories. I moved in on a Monday afternoon. Everything I owned fit into 3 cardboard boxes and a duffel bag. Some clothes, a photo album, the kids' drawings that I'd saved, a coffee maker I'd bought at a thrift store. That first night, I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to figure out what to do next. I had $800 left. The motel was $300 a week. I still had my engineering job, but the warehouse had let me go when I asked for fewer hours to try to spend more time with my kids. I was making about $3,200 a month after taxes, which meant after rent I had maybe $2,000 for food, gas, child support, and trying to save enough to get into a real apartment where I could have my kids overnight. The math didn't work. It would never work. I thought about my children sleeping in Marcus's condo, Emma in her own room again, Jake probably already calling him Marcus instead of that guy, Rachel tucking them in and telling them some version of our story where I was the failure, the one who couldn't make it work, the one who let them all down. For the first time since the diagnosis, I allowed myself to think the unthinkable. Maybe they'd be better off without me. Maybe I'd sacrificed everything only to become nothing, a cautionary tale, a man who'd given everything and ended up with less than nothing. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the sun to set. Long enough for the parking lot to fill with the evening crowd. Long enough for the neon SUT sign to flicker on, casting a red glow through my thin curtains. I didn't eat dinner. I just lay down on that sagging mattress and stared at the water stains on the ceiling, trying to find shapes in them the way I used to find shapes in clouds with Emma when she was little. That's where I was at 1:14 a.m. when I heard the knock. 3 deliberate raps. Firm, purposeful. My first thought was that it was a mistake. My second thought was that it might be police. Maybe something had happened to the kids. My third thought, the one that made my heart race, was that maybe it was someone coming to rob me, having seen the broken man who'd checked in that afternoon with nothing worth stealing except his last shreds of dignity. I got up slowly, my entire body aching from exhaustion and stress. I looked through the peephole. A man stood outside. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Well-dressed in a dark suit despite the late hour. He was holding a leather folder. His face looked tired but kind, creased with lines that suggested he smiled often, but wasn't smiling now. I opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. "David Morrison?" he asked. "Who's asking?" "My name is Robert Hendricks. I'm an attorney. I've been looking for you for 3 months. I almost laughed. An attorney looking for me. That was perfect. Maybe someone was suing me. Maybe there was some medical bill I'd forgotten, some creditor who'd tracked me down to this motel room to take whatever I had left. "I don't have any money," I said. "I'm not here about money you owe," he said quietly. "I'm here about money you're owed. May I come in?" Something in his voice, some quality of sincerity, made me remove the chain and open the door. Robert Hendricks sat in the single chair in my motel room, a plastic thing that creaked under his weight. I sat on the edge of the bed. He placed his leather folder on the small table and opened it carefully, like it contained something precious. "Mr. Morrison," he began, "do you remember a man named Arthur Brennan?" The name drifted up from my childhood like smoke. "Arthur, the old man on Clifton Street?" "That's right." Hendricks nodded. "You lived in that neighborhood from age 11 to 17, correct?" "Yeah." I was confused, my tired brain struggling to make connections. "Mr. Brennan, he was the old guy at the end of the block, lived alone in that brown house with the overgrown yard." "You helped him," Hendricks said. It wasn't a question, and suddenly I was remembering. Mr. Brennan. God, I hadn't thought about him in 20 years. He'd been a widower, probably in his 70s even back then. No kids, no family that anyone knew of. The neighborhood kids used to call him weird, crossing the street to avoid his house. But I'd always felt bad for him. Something about the way he'd sit on his porch alone, the way his yard had gone to seed because he couldn't maintain it anymore, the way you could sometimes see him through the window eating dinner by himself at a table set for one. I was maybe 12 when I first knocked on his door and asked if he needed help with anything. My mom had raised me right, taught me to help people who needed helping. Mr. Brennan had been suspicious at first, like he couldn't believe a kid would offer help without wanting something. But I came back the next weekend and the next. For 6 years, I'd mow his lawn every weekend during the summer. I'd rake his leaves in the fall. I'd shovel his driveway after snowstorms. I'd carry his groceries from his car. He drove an ancient Buick that probably should have been off the road a decade earlier. I'd help him fix things around his house, learning basic plumbing and electrical work alongside him. He'd try to pay me, but I'd never take it. My mom says neighbors help neighbors, I'd tell him. We'd talk sometimes. He'd tell me stories about his wife, Margaret, who died of a stroke 10 years before I met him. He'd tell me about working at the steel mill for 40 years. He'd ask about school, about my life, about my dreams. When I left for college at 18, I went to his house to say goodbye. He'd shaken my hand, his eyes wet, and said, "You're a good boy, David. Better than most people 3 times your age. Don't let the world make you hard." I'd thought about him occasionally over the years, wondered if he was still alive, felt guilty that I'd never gone back to visit. Then life happened. College, meeting Rachel, marriage, kids, career. And Mr. Brennan had faded into the category of childhood memories, warm but distant. Mr. Brennan passed away 6 months ago, Hendricks said gently. He was 92 years old. He died peacefully in his sleep. I felt a pang of sadness. I should have visited him. He spoke about you often, Hendricks continued. I was his attorney for the last 15 years of his life. When we drew up his will, you were the first name he mentioned. I looked up sharply. What? Hendricks pulled documents from his folder. Arthur Brennan had no living relatives, no children, no siblings, no nieces or nephews. He'd lived frugally his entire life, saved his money, invested wisely. When he died, his estate was valued at approximately $1.2 million. The number didn't make sense. I shook my head. That can't be right. He lived in that small house. He drove an old car. He lived modestly by choice, Hendricks interrupted. He'd grown up during the Depression. Saving was in his nature, and after his wife died, he had no one to spend money on. Nothing he wanted to buy. The money just accumulated. Hendricks spread papers across the table. He left most of his estate to various charities, cancer research, veterans organizations, animal shelters, but he left a significant portion to you. To me? Why? Hendricks pulled out a letter, old and written in shaky handwriting. He wrote this to be given to you upon his death. Would you like to read it? My hands were trembling as I took the letter. The paper was yellowed, dated 3 years earlier. Dear David, if you're reading this, I've finally shuffled off this mortal coil. About time, probably. I've been old for a long time now. I want you to know that the years you spent helping me, talking to me, treating me like I mattered, those were some of the best years of my life after Margaret passed. You were just a kid, but you had more kindness in your little finger than most adults have in their whole body. You never asked for anything. You never wanted payment. You just helped because you thought it was right. That's rare, David. That's precious. I don't know where you are now, what you're doing, if you have a family of your own, but I hope you're happy. And if you're not, if life has beaten you down the way it beats down all good people eventually, I hope this helps. You gave me family when I had none. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to get up in the morning, knowing someone cared if I was okay. This is my way of saying thank you. Use it well. Use it to build something beautiful. You deserve beautiful things, David. With gratitude and love, Arthur Brennan. I read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. Hendricks waited patiently. How much? I finally asked. Hendricks pulled out another document. Mr. Brennan left you 3 things. First, his house on Clifton Street. It's been maintained by the estate and is fully paid off. Current market value is approximately $180,000, but I don't think he left it to you to sell. I think he left it to you to live in. I couldn't speak. Second, he left you his investment account. After taxes and estate fees, it comes to $480,000. The number hung in the air like a miracle. $480,000. More money than I'd ever imagined having in my entire life. Third, Hendricks said, he left you this? He pulled out a small box. Inside was a pocket watch, silver and worn. This was his father's, Hendricks explained. It's the only thing Arthur carried every day for 60 years. He wanted you to have it. I held the watch in my palm. It was heavy, substantial, real. More real than anything I'd touched in months. "I've been searching for you since July," Hendricks continued. "You'd moved from your old address. Your phone number was disconnected. Your workplace said you were on extended leave. It took hiring a private investigator to finally track you down to this motel." I couldn't form words. My brain couldn't process what was happening. 6 hours ago, I'd been lying on this bed thinking about how I'd lost everything. Now I was holding a pocket watch from a man I'd helped as a kid, being told I'd inherited nearly $500,000 and a house. "There are papers to sign," Hendricks said gently, "but it's all straightforward. The house is yours. The money is yours. Arthur's only stipulation was that you couldn't sell the house for at least 5 years. He wanted you to have a home, not just an asset." I set the watch down carefully on the table and put my face in my hands. I started to cry. Deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere so deep inside me I didn't know it existed. Hendricks didn't say anything, just let me fall apart in that motel room at 2 a.m. When I finally caught my breath, I looked up at him. Why now? Why did he wait until he died? Hendricks smiled sadly. "He tried to find you several times while he was alive, but he didn't want to interfere in your life. He worried that giving you money would be patronizing, would change your relationship, would make you feel obligated to him. He was a proud man, David. He wanted to give you something that would help without strings attached. Death was the only way he knew how to do that." "I would have visited him," I whispered. "If I'd known he was thinking about me, I would have come back. He knew that, and I think that's exactly why he didn't tell you. He didn't want you coming out of obligation. The memory of you helping him freely, without expectation, without obligation, that was precious to him. He didn't want to taint it." Hendricks stood up, leaving the papers on the table. "These are yours to review. My contact information is on the card. When you're ready, call me and we'll finalize everything." "But David, there's no rush. The house isn't going anywhere. The money isn't going anywhere. Take time to process this." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Arthur made me promise to tell you something if I found you. He said, 'Tell David that kindness is never wasted. Tell him that the good we do comes back to us, even if we can't see how. Tell him to be kind to himself, too.'" After Hendricks left, I sat in that motel room until dawn, holding Arthur's pocket watch, reading his letter over and over, trying to understand how my life had just changed in the span of an hour. The water stains on the ceiling looked different now. They weren't accusing faces anymore. They were just water stains. Meaningless. Temporary. Nothing. I didn't move out of the Sunset Motel immediately. That might seem strange. I had enough money to move anywhere I wanted, but I needed time. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to make sure I did this right. For a week, I went to work at my engineering job and came back to room 117 at night. But now, instead of staring at the ceiling in despair, I sat at the little table with a notebook and made lists. I called Hendricks and signed all the papers. The house would be ready for me to move into in 2 weeks. They just needed to do a final inspection and handle some minor repairs. The money was transferred into a new bank account I opened at a credit union, sitting there like a promise. But I was careful. I'd learned what it felt like to lose everything. I wasn't going to squander this gift. First, I hired a lawyer. Not for me, exactly, but to understand my rights, to start building a case for custody modification. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she was honest with me in our first meeting. "The system is biased toward primary custody remaining with whoever has it initially," she explained. "But you now have stable housing and financial security. In 6 months, we can file for a modification. If you can prove you've maintained stability, that you're engaged and present, we have a good chance of getting joint custody at minimum." What do I need to do? Document everything, every missed video call from Rachel's end. Every time you show up for visitation, get the kids' teachers' contact information, stay involved in their schooling, go to therapy. The court likes to see that parents are taking care of their mental health. Build a life that demonstrates you're a stable, engaged parent. I did everything she said. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Ramirez twice a week. At first, I didn't want to. Talking about feelings seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford. But Patricia was right. It helped. Dr. Ramirez helped me process the betrayal, the anger, the grief. She helped me see that I'd lost myself in trying to save Rachel, that I needed to rebuild not just my circumstances, but my sense of self. I moved into Arthur's house on a sunny Saturday in February. Emma and Jake were with Rachel that weekend, so I moved alone, carrying my 3 boxes and duffel bag into a fully furnished 3-bedroom house with hardwood floors and a fireplace and a backyard with an old oak tree perfect for climbing. I walked through every room, touching the walls, opening closets, standing at windows. This was mine. Arthur had given me this. A place to be safe, to heal, to rebuild. I set up the kids' rooms first, even though they wouldn't be sleeping there yet. Emma's room got painted purple. I remembered she'd loved purple walls before we lost the house. Jake's room became blue with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. I bought new beds, new dressers, new everything. I wanted them to see that I'd built something for them, that this was their home too. The money sat mostly untouched. I paid off the remaining medical debt, $43,000 that had been hanging over my head like a sword. I bought a reliable used car, nothing fancy, just a Honda Accord that would start every time and get me where I needed to go. I put $300,000 into conservative investments that would grow slowly but safely. The rest I kept in savings, earning interest, a security blanket against ever being that desperate again. I didn't tell Rachel about the inheritance. Not yet. That was Patricia's advice. Let her think you're struggling, Patricia said. Let her get comfortable. Let her make mistakes. Then, when we file for modification, it'll be clear that you've pulled yourself together while she's been assuming you'd stay down. My visits with Emma and Jake were supervised at first, a social worker sitting in the corner while we played board games or colored or talked. It was humiliating, being monitored with my own children, but I never let them see my frustration. Dad, why can't we come to your house? Emma asked during one visit. Soon, sweetheart, I told her. We just have some grown-up stuff to figure out first, but soon. I miss you, she whispered. I miss you too. Every single day. The social worker wrote something in her notebook. Good, I thought. Write that down. Write down that my daughter misses me. Write down that she wants to be with me. It was early April when Rachel called me. We'd barely spoken since the divorce, all communication going through lawyers. But this time, she called my cell phone directly. David, she said, and I could hear something different in her voice, something uncertain. We need to talk. What about? Can we meet? Maybe for coffee? I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We met at a Starbucks halfway between her place and mine, though she still thought I lived at the motel. She looked good, healthy. Her hair had grown back thick and lustrous. She'd gained weight in a good way, looked vibrant and alive in a way she hadn't in years. Part of me was happy for her, the part that had loved her for 12 years, that had sold everything to save her life. But another part felt nothing at all, like she was a stranger wearing a familiar face. How are you? She asked, sitting across from me with a latte. Fine. The kids said you seem different. Happier. I didn't respond. She shifted uncomfortably. Look, I know things ended badly. You took half my money and my kids after I sold everything I owned to save your life. Badly is an interesting way to put it. She flinched. I was scared, David. Can you understand that? I'd just survived cancer. I felt like I'd been given a second chance, and I panicked. I made mistakes. Mistakes, I repeated flatly. Marcus and I aren't together anymore, she said suddenly. It didn't work out. He was... She waved her hand vaguely. He wasn't who I thought he was. I almost laughed. And you're telling me this why? Because I've been thinking. About us. About what we had. About what you did for me. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled back. I think I made a terrible mistake, David. I think we could try again. For the kids? For us? Try again, I said slowly. Yes. She leaned forward, her eyes pleading. I know I hurt you. I know I said terrible things. But we're both different now, stronger. We could rebuild. No. The word hung between us like a wall. David. You don't get to do this, I said quietly. You don't get to destroy me. Take everything. Tell me I'm not a real man, and then come back when things don't work out with your personal trainer and expect me to just take you back. I was wrong about what I said. You were, I stood up. You were wrong about a lot of things, Rachel. But you were right about one thing. You deserve a real man. Someone who will treat you the way I treated you. And I deserve someone who won't throw that away the moment things get hard. Please, she said, and she was crying now. I still love you. No, you don't. You loved the idea of security. You loved having someone who would sacrifice everything for you. But you never loved me. If you had, you couldn't have done what you did. I left her sitting there in that Starbucks. I didn't look back. That night, I got a text from her. I heard you have money now. A house. Is that what this is about? You want revenge? So someone had told her. Maybe Marcus had people watching me. Maybe someone from the old neighborhood had seen me at Arthur's house. It didn't matter. I texted back. This isn't about revenge. This is about self-respect. Please don't contact me except about the kids. She didn't respond. 6 months after the divorce, we went back to court. Patricia had prepared meticulously. She had documentation of everything, every visitation I'd attended, every therapy session I'd completed, every school event I'd been to. I'd started attending Emma's school performances and Jake's t-ball games, watching from the bleachers even when Rachel glared at me. Every supervised visit where the social worker noted how engaged and appropriate I was with my children. Rachel's lawyer tried to argue that my circumstances hadn't substantially changed. Patricia pulled out the documentation, proof of the house, proof of my income, proof of stability. Your Honor, Patricia said, Mr. Morrison has done everything the court asked. He's maintained stable employment and housing. He's engaged in therapy. He's been present and appropriate at every visitation. His children are thriving when they're with him. There's no reason to continue limiting his custody. Rachel's lawyer argued that changing custody would disrupt the children's stability. But then Patricia called Emma to testify. Emma was 10 now, old enough for the judge to consider her wishes. She sat in the witness box in her purple dress, looking small and brave. Emma, the judge asked gently, where would you like to live? With my dad, Emma said immediately. I want to live with my dad. Can you tell me why? Because he always showed up, even when he was tired, even when things were hard. He came to my school plays. He helped me with my homework during visits. He bought me art supplies because he remembered I liked to draw. He made me a purple room. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. Mom left him when he had nothing. But he never left us. He kept trying. He kept showing up. That's what real parents do. I was crying. I didn't try to hide it. My 10-year-old daughter understood more about love and loyalty than most adults ever would. The judge called Jake up next. He was 7, too young to testify formally, but the judge asked him simple questions. Do you like spending time with your dad, Jake? Yes. What do you do together? We play catch, and he's teaching me to build things, and he tucks me in and reads me stories about dragons. Do you feel safe with your dad? Yes. Dad's the safest person I know. The judge made her ruling 2 weeks later. Joint custody, 50-50 split. 1 week with me, 1 week with Rachel, alternating holidays. Rachel was furious. I could see it in her face as the judge read the ruling. She'd lost control, and she couldn't stand it. But I just felt relief. My children would sleep in those rooms I'd prepared. They'd climb that oak tree. They'd be home. A year later, I was sitting on the back porch of Arthur's house, my house, watching Emma and Jake play in the yard. Emma was teaching Jake how to do cartwheels. Jake kept falling over sideways, laughing every time. I was holding Arthur's pocket watch, running my thumb over the worn silver. I did this often, especially when I needed to remind myself that kindness mattered, that good things could come from simply being decent to another human being. Rachel had eventually moved on. She was dating someone new, someone who worked in finance and drove a Tesla. I didn't care. My relationship with her was limited to co-parenting logistics and nothing more. We could be civil for the kids' sake, but we'd never be friends. Sometimes Emma asked me about the divorce. Why did Mom leave? She asked one night when I was tucking her into her purple room. I thought carefully before answering. Your mom was scared, Em. She'd been very sick, and sometimes when people are scared, they make choices they wouldn't normally make. It wasn't your fault or Jake's fault. It was just something between us. Did you stop loving her? No, I said honestly. I loved her through everything, but love isn't always enough. Sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes people hurt each other too much to come back from it. Do you hate her? No, I don't hate her. I hope she's happy. I hope she finds what she's looking for. Emma hugged me tight. I'm glad we're here, Dad. I'm glad you didn't give up. I could never give up on you, I whispered into her hair. You and Jake are my entire world. At work, I'd been promoted to senior engineer. The financial stress had lifted, and I found I was good at my job again, creative and focused in ways I hadn't been in years. I'd even started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee dates here and there, slowly learning to trust again. Dr. Ramirez told me I was one of her success stories. You could have let this break you, she said during one of our sessions. Most people would have, but you chose to rebuild. That takes remarkable strength, David. I didn't feel strong, I admitted. I felt destroyed. Strength isn't about not falling apart, she said. It's about what you do after you fall apart. You fell apart, and then you put yourself back together into something even better than before.